Reddit. What is the saddest feeling in the world? A good friend of mine lost her 20-year-old son unexpectedly one day when he just literally dropped dead in college studying at his desk due to some undiagnosed heart problem. 1 year later she buried her husband, who died of cancer, leaving her all alone. I learned from her that there is some sadness that never leaves you, and to hug my family members and tell them I love them whenever I can because you never know what will happen. Seeing my mum cry gives me a horrible feeling in my gut. Absolutely this. My parents are both super emotionally strong and I've only seen them cry once or twice. I remember when my grandmother died and my dad held a speech at her funeral. He started off good, but then slowly his words started drowning in sorrow. Rough crap, especially for a kid. Feeling completely alone, not being able to sleep, not wanting to even begin to deal with the new day. That and then you wake up in the morning but don't have a reason to. I have 3 siblings who all have little ones. As it is 2015, I often see my siblings post photos of their kids, especially baby pictures, and the happiness is contagious. My siblings are rightfully so elated to be parents. It's clearly one of the most fulfilling things they've ever done. But I have a 4th sibling, too. She was my parent first. She died when she was 3 years old in 1979. When I was growing up, my parents had no problem talking about her, but we didn't talk about her all that often. I knew that they loved her and that they are holding on to the idea of an afterlife so that they may see her again, but we just didn't talk about her much. This past Christmas Eve, after having a really nice dinner, my parents and I came home and busted out some photo albums. My dad is recently retired, and he's making these albums in chronological order for us kids to have. One of the first albums had photos I had never seen before. Photos of my parents' life together when it began. Photos of my sister. So many photos of my sister. The same kind of photos I see my siblings take of their children. And I get it now. My parents were just as happy as my siblings are now. So excited, thinking they had the best lives to be so lucky as to have such a beautiful child. And the sadness is overwhelming to me, knowing how the rest of the story goes. No one deserves to lose a child. My dad came from a large family and the youngest girl in the family died when she was a few years old. We visit her grave every few years less often. Now that I'm grown up, and my dad talks a little about her when we do, it's weird knowing that there was this person that could have been in your life, and you never got the chance to meet them. Grief over someone's death. It's hard, especially the first time you experience it, to comprehend that an entire life and everything that goes with it has been snuffed out, and that no matter what, you will never see that person again. To me, that's the saddest part. My dad passed away 2 weeks ago, and I'm still struggling to come to terms with it. Sometimes it almost feels like he's just not home yet, like he's back late at the office, and then reality hits me that he's really gone, and the devastation and tears set in. This is the first time I've experienced such grief and it sucks balls. Total loneliness. Any other feeling can be at least soothed by sharing it with a friend. For me it sucks because it's my only comfort. My mind is a never-ending merry-go-round of my own BS insecurities and excuses to never get my crap straight. It's feeling of emptiness. I feel lonely as frick and unloved and filled with self-hatred. That's not the worst though. It's being forgotten by someone you could never forget. The worst pain in my life was from the day I interrupted my husband's suicide attempt this past August. Opening the guest room door to find his army uniform laid out on the bed next to a big bottle of pills and booze sent me into silent shock. I didn't cry out freak out, but it was almost like an icy cold blade in my stomach. I couldn't react and knew I needed to find him. Seeing his face as he came up the stairs with his army boots, the only piece missing from what he had laid out. Seeing his true despair and his realization that I knew what he was going to do made it almost too hard to bear. He dropped the boots and ran. That night, after admitting him to the VA, I cried in the bathroom of the VA, wailing inhuman sounds of grief that came and wanted from deep inside. I had held myself together to get him safe, but when all was over, it flooded over me. I felt as if I had already lost everything. I felt helpless. I felt responsible. I could have lost my beloved. He was hurting that bad and I almost couldn't help him. That's a pain I wish on no one. I still see his uniform laid out whenever I see the guest bed. Knowing you've fricked something up or hurt someone you care about, and knowing there's nothing you can do to fix it. Purposelessness. Not having a goal or passion. Not wanting anything. It sucks. Holding your dog while the vet puts him to sleep. Goodbye, old friend. I picked my dad up from the airport after not seeing him for 2 months. I was so tired on the drive home that I did not converse much. We stopped and had McDonald's around midnight. The following morning he had a stroke and eventually passed. 3 years later, my mom is on life support due to a disease that took over her lungs. She was on life support with a machine breathing for her. She was coherent and was able to hear me and respond to my questions by squeezing my hand. The doctor told me that I needed to make a decision on keeping her on life support, something I was not prepared for nor could do. She was my freaking best friend, for crying out loud. I wanted what my mom wanted, so I started to ask her if she knew where she was, and she squeezed my hand letting me know she knew. I then asked her if she knew she was on life support, which she responded she did. Finally, I asked her if she wanted to go be with dad or stay with me and my sister, and I'll never forget how hard she squeezed my hand, signifying her desire to be with my dad. This was the single most heart-wrenching moment of my life. I will never forget it. The saddest feeling is regret, especially when you find out later that something you really wanted was yours for the taking, but you were too weak to seize the opportunity. Crap, I've spent the last 3 hours avoiding calling a girl who gave me her number. This post is what I needed. I'm going in. Watching your children starving or dying. Deciding you're going to commit suicide but then not following through. You're still technically alive but you feel dead inside. Just defeated and not even the same person you used to be. Being suicidally depressed and alone, trying to reach out to people and having everybody turn you away. Geez, I feel for you, because I feel exactly the same. It's hard to scream when you know no one will hear you. The feeling that in the end of your life, you may be completely alone. Finding out that the person you thought you loved cheated on you. Knowing your real love will never come back. Years of love have been forgot in the hatred of a minute. Being in love with someone that loves someone else. Become a professor at their son's school and take away his house points for insignificant reasons. Taking a loved one to the airport not knowing when you'll see them again. And if you'll ever see them again. Loneliness is one of the worst. Nothing makes it better. You can be lonely in a room filled with 1,000 people. When you've worked your absolute hardest at something, but you still fail. I tutored algebra last year to high school students, and one student, his name was Ryan, would slave over every problem. He worked so hard and you could see he put 100% into the work, but he got nervous at test time and failed his quizzes repeatedly. He would come into the tutoring lab every week with his quiz and on the verge of tears. It was incredibly sad to see. The unmutual feeling of being close to someone. It just sucks for someone to not care about you as much as you care about them. When you're sitting in a dark room in front of a computer, it's 3 AM and you're all alone, scrolling your files for something to do, refreshing the front page of Reddit every 10 seconds just to see if something new has been posted, looking through your Steam games catalog and finding no games that appeal to you at that moment. You just sit there in the dark, doing nothing for hours, contemplating all of your options until the morning sunlight shimmers through your curtains. The rays of defeat shine upon you as you lower your head in shame, whispering to yourself, I should have just played League or Counter-Strike. And then you go to bed, wake up, repeat. When your first pet dies and the concept of death really hits home, you then go in and look at your parents and grandparents and realize that you are more than likely going to have to deal with their deaths as well. Losing your mother, father, best friend. When they die it doesn't really hit you, it hits you later, and what hits you is that they are gone completely and forever. You will never hear their voice again, or see their face. All you are left with is regrets at first. That fight, that time you were in a bad mood and were rude to them. It takes a long time to get over the fact that you can never apologize. You can never make the past right. Knowing that you don't want to pick a side in your parents' divorce, but deep down inside you already picked your mom. Not being able to go back to how happy you were before. It won't ever be the same. Watching the woman you love slowly lose control of her own thoughts. I've been in the hospital with my so for the past 3 days awaiting a bed in the psych ward. In these days I've witnessed demonic possession, temporary loss of memory, she couldn't recognize our 2-year-old son at one point, violent anxiety attacks, and a plethora of voices telling her what to do and what is going to happen. It has been the longest 3 days of my life. I would give anything to make her well. This really hit home. I guess being rejected by everyone. I felt this maybe a few times in my early teens, and it hurt like heck. Today I feel horrible when I see kids being bullied, picked on, or just being rejected. That creates trauma and insecurities for life. I want you, I need you, but there ain't no way I'm ever gonna love you. You are the most important person in my life. I care deeply about you and want you to be happy. I want you in my life as I realized a life without you is incredibly hollow. But I don't want to be with you. This happened to me not long ago. I'm really freaking confused. My story doesn't compare to most of these people's stories, but I came out gay to my father, my best friend, when I was 17. The day before I told him we were out at a baseball game, went out to our favorite restaurant and had a great freaking time. When I told him, I was crying and he said he just wanted to help me with whatever is wrong, that I could tell him anything. I'm gay, and he hit me and told me I will never accept that. He left our house, got in his car and drove off. He came back, ran through the door, tears in his eyes, threw me to the ground, went to my room, handed me a few things from my room, dragged me to our front door, took my phone from my pocket and handed me $20. Go to your aunt's house. I walked across town and stayed there. My aunt is liberal, but I was too scared to tell her why I was kicked out of the house, so I just told her we were fighting about what we thought was right and wrong. The next day my aunt told me there was a phone call for me. It was my dad, who said he wanted to meet for breakfast. He drove up in his truck, said, "Have you changed your mind?" I said, "It's not something I can change my mind about." He said, "Don't ever speak to me again." I tried stopping him to get him to listen for a second. I said, "Can please talk for a second? We come from a little bit of money," and so he used that as leverage over my sisters to take his side over mine. But the fact that 6 years has gone by and I still have no communication with them is kinda sucks. I didn't realize my dad could turn from being my best friend to never speaking to me again in a few short exchanges of words. Since then, my aunt forced me out of the closet to her, but in full support. I lived with them for a year, went to HS, occasionally saw my family at church and things like it, went off to college and haven't seen them since. Failing an exam you studied hard for. Losing both your children Halloween night in a car accident while the youngest was in his Halloween costume. Knowing your child has something wrong with them before they are born. Being told your wife should have an abortion. When your child is born they are flown by helicopter to San Francisco Children's Hospital. Watching your newborn have multiple surgeries. Driving 4 hours each weekend to see your wife who is living in a Ronald McDonald house. They help tons. Watching your child prosper for a couple of months only to go back downward. Being told there is nothing more to do and you only have a month or so left. Taking your child home knowing there is nothing you can do but still hoping. Flying across the country to seek other solutions but being told no. Feeling guilty that you should be doing more and not knowing what to do. Having hospice come to drug your child so they are not in pain. Holding your son of 6 months and watching him take his last breath. Having to call the mortuary and watching them take him away. Not knowing what to do now. Feeling helpless. It has been 14 years and I think about what he would be like today. He was a trooper and stronger than I will ever be. The first time you opened the front door immediately after your dog dies. Having no friends at all. When a girl dumps you because she doesn't have any time for relationships and then you find out she has a new boyfriend in few days. As an international student, I say being lonely. I don't mind to be alone, but I don't like to be lonely. The lack of connection to people around. Sometimes you just sit there and let the thoughts run. It's just you and yourself there in a quiet room. Don't know what else to do besides thinking how lonely you are. Then you can't talk to anyone about this because they don't understand. If they do, they probably don't care. You end up not having many people to talk to. Knowing that someone you love unconditionally chose death instead of staying alive with you. Unrequited love. Knowing that you're going to die soon and your life has been a tedious waste of time. As a person with intense anxiety about romance, emotional intimacy, not the breakups themselves, but returning to the same spot after each one, the spot of knowing that you ruined it, you can't control your emotions and be stable or dependable in that one area even though you do just fine in any other aspect of life. Knowing that I would be an amazing father and super supportive husband, done work in childcare, have great family relationships, and yet probably never will, because I ruin every single relationship by being too needy, too anxious, and being stuck in this stupid cycle. Then I get over it after a while, get myself together, get confident, go out and land a great girl with little effort, have a great few months together. Then the euphoria starts fading and suddenly I need her and I'm so insecure and how the heck do I always do this, and boom. Toxic. One more life I'm shut out of. When you're surrounded by people but still feel alone. You have been visited by the bee of jazz. Like this video to have your ears filled with cool jazz. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day you magnificent people.